So let's see. Muscles can only contract, which means they have to work in pairs. So one goes this way, the other pulls this way. You can't have muscles push. If you did, you just have the bicep muscle would push your arm this way and pull the arm, but it can't. It can only pull, so you need the bicep and the tricep. So bicep and tricep. Tri, miss the I. Okay, so antagonistic, meaning they're at each other, like they're going in opposite directions. If you're antagonistic with somebody, it means you're fighting them going in opposite directions. That's how people end up pulling muscles, like your athletes or anybody really pull a muscle. It means they weren't working in opposite pairs. One went contracted too early and then tore itself. So synovial joints, some movements, not others. The structure of a joint and how the ligaments connect. Ligaments determine how it moves, so that's an R. So the structure, ligaments, and we have flexion, extension, abduction, and then back here I can't see it, this adduction. Yeah, so flexion, so those are the different definitions. So if, for example, your hand here, flexion, you're pulling it back, putting your hand up is extension. And you've heard of hyperextension before, I think, when people extension. People go too far to joint, it can damage, like you hyperextend your elbow, you go like this, oh, it got extended too much, and then it can damage the joint. Down here in your leg, we got extension, and then you're putting your leg forward, extension, and then flexion here. Flexion, X. Flexion, extension. Oh, this is interesting. I remember if you go exercise at the gyms, you'll see these abductor and adductor machines. So it's adduction, pulling it in, adduction. When you bring your leg in, if you move it out, it's called abduction. Okay, adduction, and you see those machines at the gym. You sit there and you pull your leg out. Well, that's the abduction. And then the other machine, you'll pull your leg in, and that's the adduction. Confusing. They sound almost exact same. So if you look under a microscope, which we did a little while ago, you'll see small stripes on the skeletal muscle. Those are called striations, and somewhat on cardiac muscle as well. Striations. Ooh, it's really lagging. Striations. Okay. Two types. So you have skeletal muscle, that's type 1. You just have smooth muscle, like your digestive system, what I say, part of your stomach, esophagus, blood vessels, they can contract and relax, and then cardiac, which is your heart muscle. Okay, very specialized, perform those functions that only the heart can do. So we're fibrils. So muscles made of these bundles called fibrils, and a single membrane surrounds the fiber. It's called the sarcolemma, or sorry, sarcomere. Sorry, that is sarcolemma, like I thought. Sarcolemma. Sorry about that. So the sarcolemma, there are many nuclei, and that's an interesting thing about these muscles as cells, in that they're multinucleate, and most cells just have that single nucleus. So it definitely is a bizarre thing, and I'm not sure if there's a good explanation of why that is. But lots of nuclei in the muscle cells, and the muscle cells are much longer than normal cells, and the sarcoplasmic reticulum stores calcium, and calcium is what allows the muscle to contract. So if we see here, this is the sarcolemma. Okay, this section, and then we're going to be blowing it up, make it a lot bigger. Here's again the sarcolemma, and this is a myofibril. I just need to slow down on this. It doesn't lag. It can't keep up with me. Myofibril. Beautiful. Nice and clear. But see, that's very fascinating. You have the sarcoplasmic reticulum covering. This is what stores that calcium, releases. We'll get to in a second. Here's the actin, and then the myosin in the middle. Very cool. And a whole bunch of, here's our, oh yeah, what do you think these are? All these kind of roundish things. These are the nuclei. Can't see that all. Slow down. Oh, I'm going to write it like this. So nuclei. Oh, and check out, you got to be able to guess, what are these things? They're all over these cellular structures. Very important. Mitochondria. Because why do muscles need so many mitochondria? Because they use a lot of energy and need a lot of ATP to power them. So there are many parallel elongated structures called myofibrils in the muscles, and light and what we call dark bands are visible. That's under the microscope. And the myofibril have these contractile sarcomeres, and that sarcomere is that area between the Z lines, and the darker and the lighter areas are due to the fact that the actin is very thin, and the myosin is, what's the opposite of thin? Thick. So the myosin is nice and thick, and the actin filaments are attached, I think it's behind there, I think the Z lines, I think that's back in there again. I can't see because my picture is here, video there. So during contraction, the myosin fibers pull the actin filaments toward the center. So it starts out like this, and then it pulls in, that sarcomere gets shorter, and that shortens the sarcomere. Yeah, I just, sarcomere and sarcolemma, I just confused earlier. So the myosin have these heads that bind special binding sites on the actin, creating what's called a cross bridge. So they temporarily join over and over again to pull the muscles. We'll see in a second. And when it's attached, it can exert the force from energy. What is that molecule that provides energy for all cellular action? Starts with an A, as you can see, and we abbreviate it ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So many can form at once, these cross bridges. More cross bridges gets you a more forceful contraction. So it's just amazing how we can be very light with our, grab something very, very carefully with very little pressure. I'm not really attaching or making many cross bridges, and then we can really grab something tightly. And in that case, we're using a lot of cross bridges, and you guessed it, a lot of ATP. If you're going to make a lot of those cross bridges, that makes you tired, burns calories, and as we know, when you burn a lot of calories, you exercise, you get from that heat that's released. So when the muscle is relaxed, a protein called tropomyosin on the actin blocks the myosin binding sites, and when a motor neuron sends an action potential, a nerve impulse, we call it AP, action potential, or an impulse. So that can be confusing, so that confuse you. Calcium ions are released, and they bind to something called troponin. Calcium goes and binds to the troponin, and that causes that tropomyosin to move, and those binding sites are there for the myosin heads to attach. I can't remember, is there a blank right there? I don't know. And the myosin heads attach the actin, and if they contract, it shortens the distance. Let me just double check. I can't see back behind there. Let's see what. Sorry about this. Oh, what's the next one? Is this the right one? No. Sorry. Thanks for your patience. So, okay. And expose the binding sites of myosin heads. Then attach, which moves a short distance. That's what I think. I'm correct with that. Moves. Okay, so that's good. Getting more, continuing on with what ATP does. If you add ATP, it breaks that cross bridge between the myosin head and the actin. So when that happens, that myosin is released. It's not contracting anymore. And if it goes from ADP to ADP, that provides energy to the myosin head and places into the head into an energy storage position, or storing. So you can kind of think of it like, look at a hill, little hill. ATP is like down at the bottom of the hill. Okay, so the ATP is right here. But if it loses a phosphate, it turns into ADP. And guess what? Now we have a lot of stored energy at the top of this hill, right? It can just roll down the hill and release that energy, and that's what it's doing. It puts that head, say it's like this, straight, it pops it back into this energy storing position. So it can boom, it can pop forward and move it, push on the actin when it binds, and then provide that contractile force. Calcium ions are there. They will, myosin head will bind, will attach, that is, attach or bind to the actin. And once it attaches the actin, if the ADP is released, that powers it. And it's not going to release, it's going to stay stuck. We'll write that down, stays stuck until ATP breaks that cross bridge. So this is kind of the cycle here, over and over again. Okay, ATP breaking the cross bridge, ATP going to ADP, storing that energy, the ADP being released, and then powering the muscle. And here's a diagram. This is ATP, but this is no energy. No energy storage here. None. It's just chilling. Here, you'll see that phosphate got released, so this is ADP now. Now, this is storing energy. When I was a kid, I really loved my airplanes. You wound up little wood airplane wind up the propeller, and then let it go, boom, and then it'll fly. So really winding it up is like releasing the ADP here. And if you let it go, boom, it'll push. Okay, so when the ADP leaves, you have it push, and then you have contraction. I can't see behind that. Let me just double check. I'm not missing anything. Thanks for your patience. Okay, no, I think, yeah, I didn't block that off. You'll see behind here, the ADP is leaving. Okay, all right, excellent.